Good morning. Today I'm considering the topic of when it comes to experiencing a rich and vibrant life, when it comes to establishing a creative practice, do I need to make sense? Where does making sense even fit into that paradigm? My name is Robin Reynolds. I am a systems engineer and a creative coach living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I believe that we can design our lives intentionally to align with our deepest dreams and desires. And so this morning, as I'm thinking about this idea of making sense, the following thoughts occur to me. Our brains, our human brains, are very tuned into patterns and they create pathways and build connections based on patterns from the very first moment of our lives and then every day thereafter. We are building patterns in our brain. So that sounds a whole lot like making sense. That is a process that goes on subconsciously without our intentionally even managing it in our brain. And sometimes that can result in some patterns that we get stuck in or some ruts that we just kind of run around and around. This is also why we get into narrow thought patterns and have a hard time with change, which I talk about a lot if you've seen any of my videos or gone to my workshops. And so, how do we get into a creative flow? And by creative flow, I mean a specific creative project. So, actually working on creative work, or how do we just incorporate a creative flow into the very fabric of our lives so that our lives are more interesting and less uh, rote and less pattern based. So, our brain is a built in censoring system. We know that our brains are meant to keep us safe and meant to keep us secure. Those are basic human needs, and our brain has evolved to make that happen for us, even when it might not make the most sense in our current modern world. We've all heard of the left brain and the right brain framework. In that framework, the left brained people are more creative, more freewheeling, more wild and crazy. And the right brained people are very technical, very detail oriented, and just not as creative. This paradigm has been shown by neuroscientists to be oversimplified. And that is one of the fallacies that I really strive to address in my own life and mention here sometimes. Maybe you mentioned that I'm a systems engineer. I started out as a chemist. And so those career choices are not really aligned with that left brained paradigm. We would think of that as more of a right brained kind of activity. However, I am actually uh, a person who loves to cross the barriers between what we think of as left brained and right brained. I think it's entirely possible. I think the more we practice that, the more that we can do it. And the reason I like that idea and concept is because I think it leads to experiences that are more nuanced and just more fun in my life. And so I think today, let's throw out that left brained, right brained, oversimplified paradigm. It's a useful stereotype or gross model sometimes, but for what we're talking about today, I think it lacks some nuance and some detail. So, there's a part of our brain called the hippocampus, which is responsible for sort of cataloging and processing events, historical events in the past. And then it takes patterns that we've constructed over our lifetimes and creates scaffolding or frameworks upon which we hang frameworks for the future. And this is also what we hang our thoughts upon. We're building ourselves a structure inside of our brain. And considering the fact that we're doing a lot of this based on instinct and evolutionary factors, and that we're not even conscious of doing it, I think we have to really think about what framework is in there. What did we build for ourselves without realizing it? And is it serving us? Is it locking us into a pattern or patterns? And maybe we wish to have a little more freedom. And so I would assert to you today that there is other research out there that tells us that creativity is actually not just as simple as uh, creating something from scratch. We're not just out there building something out of thin air when we are being creative. No, no, no. We are actually using both of those things. We are being very pattern based. We are making a whole lot of sense, and we're using principles or anchor points within that framework that we have inside to make different connections and bring those pieces together in a way that is different. So there's the creative piece, which requires imagination. And so I think that we need both in order to successfully and consistently have a creative mindset, whether that's about our thoughts and ideas, or whether we really just literally want to sit down and paint something, or whether we want to be creative at work. We can be creative at work about how we approach problems, how we communicate, how we choose things in our career or in our personal lives. And so I think my answer today is I absolutely am not required to make sense. But when it comes to creativity, I am advocating for a combination of logical, um, connected, pattern based processes. And then we build upon that with some more imaginative, creative approaches. So the next question becomes, how can we do that? How can we um, build more creativity into our lives? So I have a few ways to enhance that creative mindset and thought process. One of them is to capture your thoughts and events, sometimes, not all the time, periodically as you're going about your day and your life. And so this could mean journaling. This can be a written journal, a traditional journal that we're used to thinking of, or it could be a visual journal, which is a process and project that we work on a ton in my workshops. So a visual journal is actually a very good example of that logical paradigm and the creative paradigm at work, at play together, because we are capturing events or thoughts, experiences in our journals, but we are not beholden to write the actual words. Oftentimes it's using paint or collage, and there are some words built in there, but we are not even responsible for making those legible. However, later when I come back to my visual journal, it is definitely a hook or an anchor point by which I can immediately harken back to some previous experience. I don't know if I've mentioned this in this forum, but my memory is actually not that great. And I think that's pretty common in general for people. If you have had any sort of trauma or significant dysfunction in your life, your brain will protect you by shutting down parts of your memory, by dissociating. And so if you have that in your life, pieces of it, capturing events either written in a traditional journal or in a visual journal, or just by taking some notes, even voice notes on your phone, can really be a helpful anchor point for you and help you get into that creative flow by helping you maintain those anchor points that you need to build that connected scaffolding that I mentioned. The second way that we can really enhance a creative mindset is visualization or mind mapping. This is something that, if you've worked with me very long, you know I do a ton. It is deceptively simple. It seems um, like it's very easy, and maybe we're not sure what's going to come out of it. But mind mapping is a very powerful, simple way to trigger thoughts and memories and ideas in your brain. Once you have a collection or group of ideas, then the next step is to connect those in a different way. We do that a ton in some of my activities and workshops. So it probably is a topic for another um, live or some other venue. But in a nutshell, you can simply brainstorm or brain dump using a notebook, post-it notes. I love the post-it notes because they are, you can move them around, you can group them. They feel like they are absolutely a combo of logical, making sense, and creativity. You can also just do some very simple thought exercises. You don't need paper to go through a mind mapping or brain dumping exercise. Let's say you are sitting in an interview, in a lobby, ready for an interview for a new job, and you're very nervous, and you really just need to get yourself in a calmer, more creative mindset so that you can walk into this interview feeling and appearing and being confident. One of the things you can do is walk through in your mind a very simple and quick mind mapping. And that can even look like, what if, what if, what if? What if I was not offered this job, but the CEO job this morning? How would that look if I had the corner office? Just thinking wild thoughts that maybe don't make that much sense, and connecting them all together in your brain can sort of shift your mindset a lot and get you into a different place. The third one is to allow your mind to wander. We don't do this often in our busy lives once we're adults. And it's very important because we can establish those connections and principles, and we can even intentionally, I won't talk too much about this today, but we can intentionally put ourselves out of our comfort zones and practice thinking in a more broad way. But if we don't allow our mind to wander, to just be idle and do nothing for periods of time on a regular basis, we can't process all of that information and create different thoughts from it. Our brain needs time and space to do that. So I know it's really hard to sit and just do nothing. I can't stand it either. But some ideas to sort of empty your mind, stop making all those to-do lists in your head, stop thinking about when is, Aunt Joanne's birthday, stop thinking about what's the deadline for your project at work, and really just allow your brain to settle and wander and sink. You can do art. That's one of the big benefits of it. Or if you need some movement, you can take a walk. You can take a shower, cook something very simple that doesn't require a ton of referencing of recipes and thinking, and really just allow your mind to do what your brain does. It is a very creative tool if we allow it to be, and we don't fill it to the brim every single day with thoughts and tasks and words. I absolutely love podcasts and I love reading, and I do those things on a regular basis. But if I do those to the exclusion of free time and thinking, then I'm not thinking my own thoughts anymore. I'm just intaking the thoughts of others, which is not conducive to a creative mindset necessarily. So this live has gotten a lot longer than I had anticipated. Apparently, I have a lot to say about this topic. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Last little tidbit that I'd like to offer is there is something our brains do called functional fixedness. This is a neuroscience principle, and it's well known that humans do this. It means that we understand the function of an object and then we have a hard time thinking beyond that function. An example would be a knife is only used for cutting. A cotton swab is used for cleaning out our ears, when in fact, there may be many other uses for these things. I can pry open a paint lid with a knife. I can take a knife and use it as a palette knife when I'm painting. Cotton swabs can be used for cleaning, for painting, for any number of things. These are very simple examples, but if we take that functional fixedness and we start paying attention to in our lives, where have we fixed, rigidly fixed a function, not only of an object, but perhaps of a person in our life, a habit, even our careers? We get very fixed on how things ought to go because we like certainty. And so I would challenge you today to consider in your life where you have gotten maybe a little rigid and think of ways to get out of that pattern. I have many videos on my YouTube, and I can put my banner there at the bottom for you so that you can see my website. Please feel free to come and visit. I have art and inspiration. I have videos all about just designing a life that makes you deliriously happy. I want that for you, and I want that for me. I hope that you have an incredible weekend and that you find some time to be creative today, regardless of what that looks like for you. Thanks for joining, friends. See you next time. Bye bye.